Welcome to Horse Talk, a podcast brought to you by the Mid-South Horse Review. At the Mid-South Horse Review, we believe that horse ownership and equestrian sports enhance the lives of our community. Whether a horse lover is a lifelong equestrian, a hobbyist, or a professional, we hope to help guide and be a resource for you and our equine community. No matter the stage of riding or horse ownership, we are here for you. I'm Lauren Pickford Abbott, publisher of the Mid-South Horse Review, and your host. Let's get started and talk horses. Welcome back, everyone. This is Horse Talk Podcast. I am Lauren Abbott, the publisher and owner of the Horse Review, and we are joined with co-host Robyn Miller for our Training Tip Tuesday conversation. We're back. We had a few weeks break with Thanksgiving in there, and then preparing for our local Excel horse show that we went to. So, Robyn, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm excited to be able to do this again. And the Excel show went so well. I was so proud of everybody. You and Kevin were awesome.
We had a couple of moments. Those damn baby stroller, man. And I laugh because since I've owned him, not since I've owned him, but I bought him. And then like 6 months later, I got pregnant. So after I had my baby, I had her in the barn with me, grooming him, but I guess he's never experienced strollers with anybody on his back. I don't know, but.
Well, definitely when they're popping out of bleachers and strolling through the woods where they're a little scared, then he was a little more concerned, but you handled it well and came back strong, and he went in his class and didn't seem bothered by it at all. So that was a really big win for both of you.
No, yeah, I thought he was great. I liked that even in some of those tense moments where he was like, we could still laugh at it at the end of the day. If you can't laugh at it, then it's just kind of like, I don't want to say don't do it, but maybe with age, we laugh at the silly moments like that with our horses. Or at least it didn't terrify me and me be like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
I understand completely. Want to make sure that we don't transfer negative energy to them in those moments to have them really explode more or get more nervous or get more worried. And when you're in a competition situation, that's sometimes difficult because we all want to do our best. Nobody wants to be the loser, so everybody, if you're going to go to a competition, obviously you want to be competitive and you want to do your best. And like I said, nobody wants to lose, but we have to be careful because we're working with such a sensitive being with our horses that we don't transfer all of our nerves and our anxieties and our disappointments if we don't do well to them, so they feel that they didn't do their job to the best of their ability. We can always improve ourselves, but they're only as good as we can get them to be. So we have to work on ourselves the most. And I think that that's a really important thing that goes into everything that we do, trying to train them and get them with us.
Yeah. I not vividly, but very highly in tune with my breathing, which everybody was like, just breathe, you're doing good. Because you can see it. It's in my shoulders and they go closer to my ears. But I told Robyn when I got on and got into like the warm-up ring, I was like, I feel like I need to do some yoga breathing before I get on and as I'm in the saddle. So I was literally taking like big breaths in my nose and blowing out, because every time I do get tense or my shoulders, he gets tense immediately, which is true for most horses, I feel like. And the moment I just am like, ooh, breathe out and just kind of relax, that's when I feel him get very loose and like, okay, she's fine, I'm fine. It's they take the cues off of us of, is there a monster?
Yeah, right. If we don't feel the monster, see the monster, acknowledge the monster, it goes away a lot faster and we're a lot more successful. And that's not saying it happens every single time, but the better we are at controlling our emotion, the much better they are at controlling theirs as well. And the stronger focus we have on the job instead of the distractions, the more focused they get on the job. And then they stop worrying about what's around them. But for y'all being out there for your first time together, you did really, really well, being very aware, first of all, of when your emotions were starting to get a little bit more anxious and getting right back in control of them. And he did absolutely respond to you and come right back down, which was a beautiful thing to see that partnership really go the way it's supposed to, and him not go, well, she got worried for a minute, now I have to stay worried. He really came up and down as you did, and you were very together and in tune, which goes along with everything that we've been talking about in these Training Tip Tuesdays about how to connect with them and how to be with them. And you put it to the test in a real life situation, and it did come out in the way that we wanted it to, which was very successful. I was so proud of both of you. I really was.
Well, I appreciate it. And I feel like and maybe it comes with age. I definitely, everybody wants to do really well at shows. They want to be competitive. But this, I felt like, was more of a test. I viewed it more as, okay, we've been practicing. Robyn's worked very consistently with him. I've been working with Robyn with him in very consistent manners and, through our lessons and things like that. So putting that to the test. And when we did have some scary moments or he got anxious, in turn, putting those lessons all together and to bring him back down, I feel like that was, my goal. And I feel like we accomplished that. But that's where I also wanted to talk about consistency in training and the way we just handle our horses in general. So if we do have moments, whether it's at a horse show or even just, horses have bad days, riders have bad days, how we can utilize the consistency that we are teaching our horse, but also the consistency training methods that we learn and putting that to the test. So if there are scary moments or, again, bad days, we can go back to, okay, let's get this back into the space where we need to be. As you like to say, back into that circle, back into that square.
Yes, keep them in the rectangle. And when you establish it, you can have it on the ground, you can have it under saddle, but the consistency of it, first of all, of the training methods that you use, try not to, and this doesn't mean don't try new things, but what I want you to do is stick with something long enough so the horse understands. If you watch a YouTube video and you're like, oh, that looks really, really cool, I want to try it, don't go out and try it one time and think, oh, that didn't work. You have to build to any kind of change or training technique and do it on a consistent basis to see results in the horse. But also, you have to apply them with the same energy, the same intention, the same motion. So the horse learns by repetitiveness. Every time you do something the same, he understands that he should do this when you do this. And if you do it one day with your hands up here and like an energy like this, and one day down here with your energy like this, he's not going to really understand what's expected of him. So the amount of pressure you put on, how you offer, how you escalate if he doesn't do it, and when you release, that consistency really builds into the horse understanding. And it won't matter if you have life get in the way and you're an adult person with a job outside of the barn. You can do maybe 1 or 2 days a week and still have that horse progress if you're consistent with how you apply things, the pressure and the release. Obviously, you have to adjust your goals when you don't have the same amount of time to work as the professional that can ride in 5 days a week for you. But that doesn't mean you can't make progress. And so many people are intimidated by the word consistency because they're like, I can't get to the barn every day. That's not what consistency really truly means. And I feel like you probably feel that same way.
Well, and I don't know if you remember, but when we first put Kevin into your training program, and you finally got to a point with him where you started to bring me in, where I could start riding him or working with him on the groundwork, and then riding him. We talked a little bit about, future expectations and goals. And when he does come home, and I asked, well, you said, he'll still need consistent training to move forward once he leaves or goes home. And I asked, what is a consistent plan that he will need? Because everybody's sense of consistency is a little bit different. For some, it is like, I have to do 5 days a week, or others, it's, well, I can get a solid 2 days in. So really figuring out per horse, because every horse is different too, what does that consistent plan look like to be able to continue to move forward in a training program if you have a green horse, or if you are wanting to move up to a next level with another horse that you have, or heck, if you're even trying a new discipline with a horse that you've had for a long time, what that consistency looks like for you and the horse. And it's not the same for every horse.
It really isn't. The consistency definitely depends on the level you want to achieve, the level you currently are, and how much time you have to put in.
Mm-hmm.
So you can you and I can achieve the same exact goal. It's just going to be spaced further apart, because I do this every single day, so I can work with that horse a lot more often.
Mm-hmm.
You have your job that you stay so busy, so your days per week is less. So we can definitely still have the same goals,
Mm-hmm.
and just have a very reasonable expectation of the length of time to get to that goal. Now, the younger the horse or the greener the horse, not necessarily dependent on age.
Yeah.
Obviously, the more days a week you can work with them, the faster things come along. What I would recommend the most is starting your program with the groundwork, and get the groundwork and the basics. And every piece of my groundwork that I do under saddle. So it's a combination of your very, very basic maneuvers to encourage flexion, softness, engagement, all of the things that build a balanced horse. And you want them soft, responsive, and supple. You can't get there if those basics are skipped over. And I feel a lot of times what I've come across is when people want that goal faster, they go, oh, well, we're just going to skip through this stuff really fast and then start on the harder things. And then what you find is when you get to those harder things start to fall apart, because the horse doesn't have that solid foundation. So with a horse, we've talked about Kevin, and I like to use him as an example. First of all, because I know him so well now, and you know him well, right, that we've set his foundation so solid because he was in a training program 5 days a week for right, close to a year, or a little over a year. And now when you take him out, if he's had 2 days off, he feels very much the same. He understands without a shadow of a doubt what's expected of him. We have built this muscle memory in him, so he knows how to carry himself, how to balance himself, and how to use himself really soft. So now if we backed off his program and he could only do 3 days a week, he would still progress pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. If you took a horse that has never been ridden, or really new and green, say like a fresh off the track thoroughbred, right, something of that nature, and you only had 2 days a week, I guarantee you would have to really be super consistent in your application of your groundwork to make forward progress on that horse, and it would be much, much slower. You would look maybe 2 years down the road to be in the same position where Kevin is now. Yeah. So those are things to consider, and nothing's right, nothing's wrong. It's what works for you and what works for your horse. But when you can really take a sit back, look at your specific situation with an honesty about how much time you can put in, mm-hmm, and how true are you to yourself? Can you go to the barn, throw all your negative emotion away, throw your day away, no matter if it was good, bad, indifferent, and say, okay, this is the energy I'm going to give to my horse every single time. I'm going to offer it to him fair. I'm going to put pressure on him until he responds, and I'm going to release consistently. And if you can really, really do that, you will make progress, and your horse will almost continually move forward up that ladder, but just at the time frame that is fair.
Yeah. I love to, excuse me, I love to compare my 2 thoroughbreds, my 23-year-old, excuse me, that I was pretty much the sole trainer, as you could say, with him. I got him right when I graduated college. I think I was 22, maybe I was 23 at the time. And he was 4 years old, 4 turning 5. And I got Kevin when he was 4 turning 5. He had much more of downtime because I got pregnant and, I was like, you just go to pasture. But just the difference in where I'm at with Kevin after, I kind of scrapped those first 2 years of owning Kevin because he was just coming down. But in your program of a little over a year, versus where my senior, when he was the same age, 7, of where we were at the same time, I was not near where I was at. He wasn't near where Kevin was at as a 7-year-old versus where Kevin's at. And that is because of the consistency and the time that I lacked putting into him when he was that young and green. 2 totally different horses, but just being able to see Kevin's just kind of progress from coming to this wild off the track thoroughbred that bit kids to, the same kid that he bit at the show said, he's just so nice and cuddly now. And I was like, well, he's always been nice, but just his mental state of what's expected of him is very different than before. He was kind of just a willy-nilly, young, typical off the track thoroughbred.
Yeah, for sure. He came to us with a little bit more of a robust attitude toward people, and now he really is a big cuddly teddy bear, and everybody loves him. And like you said, the kids that knew him before are like, that's not Kevin. Are you sure that's Kevin? And we're like, yes, that's Kevin. But I also feel that is a very common thing that happens with a consistent training program. And when I'm talking about that consistency, it's not just once you get them out and you're working with them. It's when you go out to the pasture to catch them, you're putting the halter on the same way, you're approaching them the same way, you have the same expectations of how they come to you, how they put their head in the halter. Are they trying to pull away and you're not correcting it one day, and then the next day you're really getting onto them? You have to be the same every time. If you don't like him looking away when you put the halter on, you need to correct him every single time. Once you start leading him, he's rushing ahead of you, and you're like, oh, it's fine today, I just don't even feel like dealing with it. And then the next day you're like the Gestapo, and you're like, no, he's never going to know where he belongs. So that's one of those consistencies, that it doesn't matter if you go to the barn once a week or every single day. You can be very consistent in how you catch them, how you lead them, how you put them in the cross ties, what behavior is corrected, what behavior is tolerated. And those are very consistent things that some people never think affect the ride.
Right.
And all of that stuff affects how the horse actually is under saddle as well.
Yeah. I feel very fortunate that I still call Kevin my new horse. But I feel fortunate in the sense that he came to you with really a blank slate. He had not been restarted from the track. I knew he was going to have just some typical red flags that all track horses come with. But I feel fortunate because you could put that consistent training into him. And just like you said, the way you put the bridle on, the way you put the halter on. So then when I started to work with him, you were also teaching me. You put the halter on and the bridle on this way. You do, right. So I ask him to pick up the canter this way, So all of those training, consistent time, the time and the way that you do things, I was able to learn. Whereas some people, when they get new horses, they have been restarted or they've been showing, for a year or 2 years or multiple years. And I think about the challenge it is when you do get a new horse and you have to learn, you may just be asking differently than the way that they were trained prior to you. So that bond that you have to establish with the horse through through the consistency, so they get to learn you and you get to learn them, is very timely. It does take time. So what, from your perspective, and I know all horses are different, but with a consistency and timing, 5 days a week, everybody strives to be on their horse's back 5 days a week. But what do you feel like if somebody is, especially this time of year, it's starting to get wet and cold and nasty? Everybody doesn't have access to an indoor arena, things like that. What do you really encourage for a consistent training, groundwork, but also riding during times when the weather's not ideal, or even bringing on a new project horse or getting a new show horse and trying to gear up for the next show season?
Well, what I would definitely recommend is, first of all, like we just mentioned, set realistic goals.
Mhm.
And there are so many things that you can do groundwork wise that don't require you to have to go outside of the barn. I'm pretty fortunate. I have a pretty big barn aisle, but there are things you can do as far as grooming them and little groundwork things to start to build those behaviors
Mhm.
that will lend the horse to understand mentally and physically, as far as behaviors go, what is expected when we have these crappy rainy days, or it's super cold and windy and nobody wants to be outside. So I would say, don't be discouraged about going to the barn when the weather is bad, because there are groundwork exercises, just like moving the hindquarters around, desensitizing them to the flag. Tie them in. Not, I don't like cross ties, especially for green ones or ones that we aren't familiar with how they tie. Some horses have pull pressure issues. They like to sit back. We don't want to set them up for failure. So I like to use a tie ring. They can move their feet and they can move away from the wall a little bit if they feel trapped or worried. And that's something that a lot of horses, especially track horses, have, like these sit back issues sometimes because they feel trapped in the bridle. And I've had many of them where you tie them up, and if you tie them hard and fast and they pull back and they can't get away from that wall, they panic, 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 and then they either break a halter, break the cross ties, flip themselves over. There's so many things that negatively can happen just from tying a horse that's not prepared to be tied.
Right.
So I think that those are consistent things that we can work on those kind of crappy days that you can't get out into the arena and really, you don't want to be slopping around in the mud or having your horse fall. So I would recommend not being afraid to go out and just do some groundwork. You're going to make progress. You don't have to sit on your horse to be able to move them forward in their training program, because you're building these little behaviors of, when I do this, you do this. When I do this, you do this. And like I said, teaching them to tie, teaching them patience to stand, working them through their blind spots while they're in the barn. Those are all things that matter once you get on them, and you can really start to develop good habits in them and trust before you get them into other situations where you're on their back.
Yeah. And what are some consistent techniques for the actual human being that you would recommend for them to be aware of their energy, but also when they are, not letting a horse get away with bad behavior? Maybe there's so many different things, but what are some tips for the rider with their consistent approach to their horse?
For the human to the horse, what the horse looks for the most is our energy and how we approach them to be very, very consistent. And it kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier about when you're catching them in the pasture or even in the stall, when you go to put that halter on, if he's all kind of crazy and you are like, I don't feel like dealing with it, and you just kind of struggle with him and get the halter on, and then you ignore it one day, and then the next day you're like really cracking down on him. That's a very inconsistent pattern. So we want to make sure everything that we do, We do it with a nice quiet energy. That's what the horse will relate to. We want to become their like confident leader. When we come out, we've got this, we know what we're doing. We're sure that when you come with us, you're going to be safe. And that kind of energy all the time without letting our emotions get the best of us. That is one of the main consistent things that matter to the horse the most, is that we don't come out and throw our emotional baggage on them. And, you know, being happy is great. We want that nice, positive, happy energy, but being obnoxious is not necessarily. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that I won't do things to desensitize my horse to life happening around him. Like, we want Kevin to be able to tolerate that baby carriage. So we're going to do things, but it's always going to be in a planned kind of manner that I know when I'm going to bring that energy, and I'm going to keep that energy until he gives me the reaction that I want. But I'm not going to come up to him one day and be like, oh my gosh, I hate you so much. And I'm like rough and handling him like a crazy person. And then the next day be all like, oh, baby, 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 because they don't get that. And then they see you and they're not quite sure how to take you. And that's one of the things that we want to avoid. We want our horse to understand, every time you come, I can count on you. And that's how they see that lead horse out in the pasture. They always kind of have that same kind of energy. Doesn't mean something can't happen. They go, hey, you see that over there? We have to pay attention to that. And we want to be able to do those kinds of things to our horses as well. Be like, hey, pay attention here. We need to focus over here, and have him stay with us. But if you really consistently watch horses in the pasture, you'll notice that one leader. And when he picks his head up with his ears pricked, none of them ignore him. They're all like, okay, we got you. But if you just, before that moment happens, if it's really calm and they're all grazing, you might think none of them are paying attention to anything. They might all just look like they're like sleeping in the sun or something like that. But you watch that lead horse and he moves, they pay attention. And it's remarkable, really, like how it can seem like they're really not seeing anything, but they're paying attention to so much around them.
Right. Yeah. The hyper awareness that a horse has, I mean, it goes well beyond our own awareness. Some of the things that I was thinking about, just consistent wise for me in general, and this is personally having a horse and some horses that are a little more hot to walk than some others, not walking with my cell phone and checking emails while I'm leading. It, like, before I know it, I'm going to get my foot stomped or something's going to happen. And then I'm going to be like, oh, what's going on? You know, and I'm just fueled to the scenario. But also one of the areas that I mentioned a little bit before, like with the breathing, as long as I'm relaxed and can kind of be that lead horse for my horse, I feel like that's when he stays more calm, he stays soft, he stays relaxed. So even when I first started learning how to utilize a flag and working with him on the ground, I was very like rigid with the flag, because I was like, how does this, it was uncomfortable. It was not a normal muscle memory for me. So I went home and I just like practiced like waving the flag around. And my husband was, are you in the band twirling flag? No, I'm just trying to get loose. I'm trying to get loose in my shoulders. I guess this is where I carry all my tension in my shoulders. But that helped me so much when I started, when it started all clicking. I feel like I am, if I can be really soft and loose and relaxed on the ground, that starts our, riding session off on a positive step. If I'm really rigid and stiff, then he'll be kind of rigid and stiff too. And, so it's just little things like that of practicing my own awareness of, don't be on my phone when I'm working with my horse. Don't, being loose and free when it comes to working on the ground. And that translates taking good deep breaths when I'm in the saddle to keep me relaxed. It all kind of goes hand in hand, but practicing that every single time.
Yes.
So it becomes muscle memory for me.
Definitely. It's not second nature to most of us. And, people are a lot of times intimidated by the size of horses, which is a very normal thing and it's a very justifiable thing. And one of the pieces of our groundwork when we're moving them around is actually to crowd them to rock back onto their hindquarter to change direction. And that is so hard for a lot of people to have that presence come up and move their horse and move into their space and expect them to get out of their space and to find that braveness. A lot of times, if they're a more gentle person or a timid person, getting that braveness sometimes turns into looking like anger because they have to like muster up and they get mad, and it doesn't work very well for the horse because then they come through and they're like, why? Yeah. So finding that balance of personalities to be a positive leader for your horse is really difficult and challenging. And I do want to acknowledge that it doesn't come second nature to everybody. And you have to practice these things with a reasonable expectation of yourself. And I don't expect every single person to be able to go out there and just be throwing caution to the wind. You
Right.
still have to be very, very aware. But to take those breaths like you're talking about and say, okay, I can do this. I know that when I do this, my horse is going to respond to me. And even if you're lying to yourself to try to muster that energy, it's going to make a world of difference in how that horse responds to you. Most horses out there don't want to be in your space. And if you just guard it, they will move out of the way. So, I try to caution people to not fill that space with anger to try to mask it or like try to bring up bravery through anger because it's a negative connotation to the horse. But we definitely want to see if we can do it without being really timid. When we talk about protecting our bubble,
Mhm.
that's the space that I'm talking about. Like we have this bubble around us that we want that horse to not invade unless we invite them in. And we have to figure out, okay, how do we fill that bubble and have it project around us with this good energy that just means I mean business and you can't come through here, because that's what gives that horse that confident leadership type of feel and energy. And once you can connect with that and apply it in how you offer all of your cues to your horse, they really do take you seriously and build that nice real true partnership. I mean, it's a bond that they understand and they're born knowing what that means. It's
Right.
amazing. Horses are one of the few creatures out there that are born with a fully developed brain. So their level of comprehension on the day they're born is the same as on the day they die. They understand and they can absorb that information from day one, which is why that um, imprinting can work on them.
Right.
Don't mistake that for attention span. The
Right.
attention span of a baby is still pretty, you can't have them out there for the same length of time as an adult horse, obviously, but they do have the capability to understand. And to me, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, because we as humans, we fail. We
Yeah.
don't understand anything. Like, we're like these helpless lumps forever.
Right. We've got scrambled egg brain for a long time. Like it slowly grows into place.
I know. When you think about your individual baby, and
Mhm.
what would she do without you?
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
would not survive. And
Right.
these creatures can pretty much survive from day one by being able to get up, run, understand what flight
That
is.
natural.
If that
Yeah.
mama runs, they instantly know, okay, I'm supposed to run too. That's fascinating. So
Yeah.
when you think about their ability to comprehend emotion, body language, and energy, it really makes you look to yourself and go, oh, that all makes a difference to them. So when I apply it in a very consistent manner, the horse will go, okay, this means this means this, and that means that. So getting in control of ourselves is one of the key things to consistent training with our horses.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about somebody who has a more nervous horse that is either, it doesn't matter if the horse is green or if it's a new horse that, they're trying to bond with, or even a horse that they're trying to ask new things of or progress. And when the horse gets really nervous and you're asking in a certain way, but the horse isn't quite getting it, talk about how you work through that to then have that light bulb moment for the horse to understand, oh, this is what she's asking.
Well, what I try to do in those kinds of situations is, let me get a more specific example so people can visualize maybe a little bit better. Imagine that I'm trying to get a really nervous horse to accept the flag. Mm-hmm. And all I'm doing is I'm waving my flag in a very consistent manner, maybe about 3 or 4 feet off to their side, not right in their face, in a very rhythmical manner. And the horse is going, oh my God, I think that the world is ending and I need to leave. Right. So they're running around. So number one, I would not want to trap the horse's feet. Mm-hmm. Any nervous horse, the more you try to hold them tight, the more nervous they're going to get, and you're not going to get anywhere. The second thing is I'm going to try to keep myself from getting frantic. I'm going to do my best to protect my bubble, but and not let the horse come in at me. I'm going to remain consistent as I can with the rhythm of that flag, that motion that he's afraid of. I'm not going to add any pressure. I'm not going to make it more. I'm just going to try to stay with that same amount of pressure that he's afraid of, while I'm encouraging him I'm not going to try to stop his feet, but I'm going to allow him to move, but I'm going to try to encourage him to move around in a circle where he's crossing those hind feet, and I keep bringing his nose towards his hind quarter. So then he's going around in a circle. In his mind, he's leaving, he's able to escape. And that's what the nervous horse wants to be able to do. Their instinct is to flee danger. So as long as I'm allowing his feet to move and I'm not holding on to him, I'm redirecting the energy and basically following him with this stimulus that's scaring the poop out of him until he can figure out that he's not about to die. Because literally he's going, I'm going to die. I have to run. I'm going to die. I have to run. So I'm just redirecting that energy, allowing the feet to move until it kind of clicks in his brain. Maybe I can stop and be okay. And the instant I feel that energy change in him, and he starts to bring himself down, it might just be a pause in the running around. It might be he takes a softer step. He might just really be, instead of pulling on my hand going, I gotta leave, he might soften into it. All of these little things let me know he's starting to think about the situation instead of just react and run away. Right. So staying consistent, but not adding pressure, not getting mad at him, not yelling at him, just redirecting to. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I have to use a lot of muscle, but I'm still just staying with a solid, controlled, confident energy that's not telling the horse you have to be afraid, but just bringing him around. And then when he takes that breath or stops his feet, whatever that moment that he go, and sometimes it's very subtle, depends on the horse. He goes, maybe I'm not going to die. I'm going to stop everything. Yeah. And I'm going to pet him and I'm going to let him go, oh my God, did you not realize I just about died? Let him finally take a breath. And then I will start again and I will repeat the same exercise. And I'm going to do that until I feel a really big positive change come in his acceptance of that stimulus. But I'm definitely not going to add any bigger stimulus when he's already that afraid. And I'm going to do my best not to take it away at his height of saying, when I'm this scared, I run away. And that's what makes it go away. If you don't keep that stimulus there and keep yourself consistent, and you release everything and you go, oh, baby, you're okay. And you like throw the flag down, he's going to go, oh, flappy flag. I get scared. I run away. It goes away. And then build the anxiety even more. So it's like a counterintuitive thing to keep a scary stimulus next to an anxious horse. And it doesn't have to be the flag. It could just be the dog running by the baby carriage. All of those things are very similar. Anything that brings the anxiety up in a horse, you want to work through it in a very consistent manner until they have a moment where they go, oh, wait a minute. I don't really have to be afraid. And then you're that solid, comforting energy right there in the center that they go, wait a minute, she's always the same. When I'm with her, I don't have to be scared.
Right.
And it eventually becomes where they get nothing bothers them because you don't let the bad stuff happen in the rectangle.
Yeah, you almost have to have a poker face.
Yes.
You either have to, I feel like poker players, successful ones, and psychologists should just be natural equestrians.
I would think so. I would think so for sure.
For all you poker players and psychologists, find a horse because you would be really good at handling them.
Well, we want to, or at least we want to do an experiment and see if that theory holds.
That's true. Yeah, it's really hard it doesn't matter what age or how long you've been around horses. It is really, really hard to keep your emotions under control when your horse can go from 90 to 100 really, really quick. Just the consistency of holding your emotions together when a horse goes from la la la, life is great, to oh my gosh, I'm going to die, which can happen immediately.
Very quickly. It takes somebody to be very in tune with their horse, and I encourage this for everybody, but it is a skill that you have to develop. You're not just, oh my gosh, I'm going to be great at this. It is something that we have to work at, we have to develop. Each personality does things at a different speed, but I kind of tell people all the time, you gotta, especially when you're in the saddle, you gotta make your butt the best liar in the world because all of that energy comes through your seat.
Right.
And when you get nervous and tense because you feel that horse spook or jump or twitch and you go, oh, and you clench down on him, he goes, oh, well, if she's scared, I gotta be scared too. So I'm like, you've got to really get in control of that energy that comes down through your seat, through your arm if you're holding the lead rope or the reins. They feel all of that. They can feel a fly land on them. They can feel when you clench your fist or when you tighten your legs or you jump when they spook. And you have to really work hard to not do those things. And it's not easy. And I mean, I do this all the time and I can preach it, but every now and then they get me too. Don't think that I'm immune to it. But the better you get back in control and do things to bring them with you. And that's another reason that I really like the exercises that we do when we untrack the hind quarter and get the horse to be very soft. And we train these, it's basically, because the word's going to leave my mind, like a conditioned response. When we train these conditioned response, because we're so consistent in when I do this, you do this, especially pick up on the rein, you give to pressure, you don't press into pressure. When I put my leg on, you move away from it. And we untrack that hind quarter and bring them around and through. Every time those hind feet cross over, they can't do the rest of the explosion. And you can really work them into a calmer state without rearing, bucking, and bolting. So we can be a lot safer. Even if it's on the ground, we can untrack them and we can not be dragged around or kicked in the face or have a horse rear up on them. Because every time we move that hind quarter around, they have to pause, and it's like pushing that clutch in on that engine that can really get out of control. But it is very difficult to get in control of those emotions. But once you start becoming in tune, and this is another reason we talk about that, keeping them in that rectangle. when you start to become aware of the ear flick or the tiny little amount of bulge coming on underneath your leg, and you're that in tune to the feel of your horse within that rectangle, and you do this little thing, say, nope, don't leave, nope, don't leave, nope, don't leave. And it might be bumping them with your leg, it might be a little close of your fingers, it might be a change in your seat, or just a breath. You keep them in that rectangle, and the big explosion, it's harder for that to happen because you're staying aware of it before. Sometimes we're on a trail ride or just hanging out in the arena, and you and I might be chit-chatting and talking about, okay, well, what are we going to talk about on our next podcast? And we miss the horse's ear go out, or we miss the head go up, or a little bit of a side eye. And they're already outside of the rectangle, and then it's going to go to the feet, and we might go, oh crap, that happened so fast. But it was because our awareness was taken away from what was happening under us, and we're all guilty of it, and we're all going to stay guilty of it. But the better we try to become aware of what's happening under us while we're having those conversations, the less likely that horse is to get out from under us, which is why that consistency really comes into play of, okay, I need to stay aware of me and my emotion and my horse's emotion. It's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
But those are definitely things that we strive to do.
Yeah. When we were at the show and we were, I guess, either waiting between the classes to go, all of a sudden I would just feel Kevin's heart start to beat. And so then oh man, I start looking around trying to scan like everything. What is he about to have a panic attack over? But it's just sometimes like in that instance, you're watching at a horse show, you're watching the people do their rounds, and you may be looking this way and your horse is looking that way. I mean, at least I felt his heart, at least he let his heart come up without reacting with his body first. Let's put it that way. But just little instances like that of, we are going to get sidetracked when we're with our horse. If we're, riding with other people, we're talking, or, we're not the intuitive animals like they are. Let's put it that way. We are very ADD in our world. So what we can train ourselves emotionally and through our own muscle memory, through just like the consistent way that we handle types of situations like that, to be able to say, okay, I'm ready. Which way you gonna go?
Right. And what I like to do is refocus them right back to where I want them, to try to not follow where their focus left,
Mm-hmm.
and say, hey, instead of being over there, how about you be back here? Stay with me. If you stay right here and come on back, nothing bad's going to happen to you because I got you. That's the goal for me, is say, don't leave, come back. And I almost want to stay aware of what possibly could get his attention, but at the same time, I want him to focus on the task at hand instead of all of those other things. So the more I bring him mentally back inside, back inside, back inside, the less he'll leave, the less he'll leave, the less he'll leave. And when he does leave, he'll go, oh, she's gonna put me right back. So he'll like, peek, come back, instead of peek, what, oh my gosh. If we continue to not stay aware and bring them back, the more that they stay distracted. But a horse does not want us pulling on them. They don't want pressure on them. So if he's constantly leaving and I put pressure on him to come back in, and when he stays with me, it's very peaceful with no pressure, eventually he won't want to leave, because he's going to know I've got his back whenever anything happens in that immediate space around us, which is basically what we call the rectangle. When we have that personal space of ourselves around us when we aren't with our horses. If you're like walking in a mall or down the sidewalk somewhere, you don't want people like brushing right up against you. You're like, dude, personal space. It's the same kind of thing, but you kind of protect your own personal space wherever you go. You're just going to wrap that all around you and him, and you're going to be the protector of both of those spaces when you're together. And eventually he goes, I got my bodyguard. I don't have to worry about nothing. And that's a really good feeling, but it takes a long time to get there. And it's us having to have that commitment of staying that aware of where our horse is. You
Mhm.
know, it's not just an easy thing to get up there and ride around on a horse. Anybody that thinks it's easy has never really done it, or you've only ever gone to the trail ride that, you know, the horse knows to follow the one in front of it. But
Because
it's,
of consistency.
yeah, because he consistently follows the tail in front of him, and he knows his job without you. And that's the other beauty of horses. Once they are trained consistently for years and years and years, that's where you get those great school horses that can teach people how to ride, because they know what to ignore and what to respond to. But it wasn't, I guarantee it wasn't there the first several rides of their life. You know, that it takes a long time for those horses to understand, this is my job, this is how I do it, and nothing else is going to rattle me. But to see what they will offer us and give
Mhm.
us once we put that time in, it's a real gift. They are very generous with their spirit and their strength and their kindness. That's a fun thing that happens on the backside of all the hard work we put in on the front side.
Yeah. Talk just a little bit about, because I think this is really, really important, especially it's just new or fresh off our minds because we just went to the show. But when you take a horse off property to either, if you're going to an event or if you're just going to ride with a friend or you're going to a horse show, how important it is to keep your nerves in check when you get your horse off the trailer. All horses come off the trailer looking around like, where am I? But talk about the process of getting in the saddle when you're at that new location, whether it is for a show or even a trail ride, a hunter pace, things like that.
Anytime that take my horse off property, especially if it's a newer horse, a younger horse, a less experienced or a less traveled horse. It could be a 10-year-old horse that's just never left property. When you change their environment, you're automatically almost guaranteed to heighten their awareness when they come off that trailer. And you have the gems sometimes that go, I don't care where I go. But the more consistent you are with how you handle them at home, as soon as they get off the trailer, nothing changes. What I do is I put that mind right back to me, kind of similar with what we were just talking about. I might do some groundwork right behind the trailer, depending on how high headed and where the mind went. But I say, stay with me. Let's do things that are familiar. So I start doing tasks that are familiar. I'm going to lead them the same. I'm not going to let them walk out ahead of me if I don't normally do that. I'm not going to allow them to jog next to me. If they're showing me anxiety, I'm going to do some groundwork, put them in a program that makes sense to them.
Mhm.
Have my energy be as consistent as it was at home to the best of my ability. Now, that's not always easy, and some horses, they can really get beside you. But if you've done your homework at home, where when you offer to untrack that hind quarter, they know without a doubt that that's what that means, then you start doing this little dance of the hind quarter, then the front quarter, and you start working them, and pretty soon they forget the world that's happening around them and they come back to you. And
Mhm.
that's, I'll do the same thing once I get them to the new barn, or if I've tied them to the trailer, when their energy comes back to me and I put the saddle on, I'll do my groundwork around the grounds of where I am. I might just walk them around and say, hey, I'm not going to just walk you around and let you look at things. I'm going to walk you around and say, it doesn't matter what those things are, you can be with me. And we do our groundwork and say, hey, how about come back to me, come back to me. And then when I get on, I do the same kinds of things. I remind them that they can be with me and do those groundwork exercises under saddle, just like we would when we would get on at home. And then the horse goes, well, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
So even if they are nervous about their surroundings or something really gets their attention, you put these tools that you have installed and worked so hard at home in place, and the horse goes, well, wait a minute, there's no reason for me to be distracted or worried or nervous, because everything feels the same. And that's where it goes back to that energy. We create a feel for them, and that feel gets where they understand it, and they go, oh, okay, I could be with you. Now, it doesn't always work perfect the way we want it to, but that's how I approach it. And if that horse doesn't come down and bring his energy to a level where I feel he is safe to get on, I'll continue to do my groundwork before I get on him. I don't just say, "Oh my gosh, I'm here. I have to ride."
Yeah.
I don't put myself at risk if my horse won't allow for it.
Right. Well, I feel like when we were at the showgrounds, we had a great schooling day, which is always so good to have. You want to have a good schooling day to just build your confidence for the next day. I felt Kevin felt amazing during schooling. He was right here, with me. We were on the same page. We did our groundwork, and when we rode, the day of the show, more horses, more people. There are people in the bleachers that weren't there before, but we forgot our training flags at the show. And I was like, oh, we don't have training flags. How is this possible? But we still did the same steps, the same movement, everything. And even putting the halter or the bridle on, I thought to myself, put his bridle on the same way, which you have taught, bring your head down. We put it on low so his head's not up. And I did have that moment of, wow, is he going to drop his head down to put this bridle on with all these people and all these horses, all this commotion around? And he did. And that's just, he knew the steps. He knew the routine. He was prepared in that sense. So I find, that was just such a great testimony to, it doesn't have to be major, crazy things that you're asking your horse. It can be as simple as having his head low when you're putting the bridle on, the way that you put it on, and take it off the same way, put the halter on the same way, all of that. It translates to so much more than just an action.
For sure. It's the same, it's the consistency. Just like we were talking about earlier, when you don't change just because your environment changes, they don't see a reason to stay worried about it. And we had 5 horses with us, and it was Kevin's second show ever, and your first time being the one asking things of him. And it was Arlo and Christian's first time together, and they did fabulously, but none of you changed how you handled them. And that's what made the biggest difference, because we saw plenty of horses there that were not so in control, and their behaviors weren't great, not from our program, but we were looking around and saying we probably could help these horses with some consistency. And I was very proud of our entire group, because they did the work, they stayed true to the program, and none of the horses really got where they were so different than they are at home. Because yes, Kevin did spook a little bit at the baby carriage going through the woods,
right?
And he had a moment, but Kevin has moments when the tarp flies at home. So it's a very consistent reaction for him when something really catches his attention and his focus. But what I was super proud of was you had some tools that never allowed it to escalate past the point of him being rideable, or you being able to get him back with you.
Right.
So that's where all of the hard work really paid off. And you can see it in all of the horses that we had. They all are going to have moments. They're animals, and they have a mind of their own. But the better we are at staying true to ourselves and our training program, and not going, hey, what's that guy doing over there? Let me try that today. It's like, no, this is not the time for that. You stay true to who you are. You keep with your own program. If you want to try whatever that guy was doing, wait till you get at home and apply it in a proper manner.
Yeah.
But that's really the basis of all of how to keep that horse with you and have the environment change without him losing his mind or being so worried about just a simple change like that that you can't get anything done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think consistency is such a great, topic and just really something to think about as an equestrian, especially when it's dark, rainy, and cold this season. Nobody likes, working their horses or even being outside when it's damp and cold and icy. So the consistency of just, the groundwork is so pivotal this time of year. But yes, consistency is such something that I think about as a adult amateur of, my time is more limited than what I would like to give to my horses, but making sure my time, having a consistent amount of time that I can dedicate every single week. And then the time that I do have, following those consistent steps and the way that I manage my horse. I mean, even down to feeding, all keeping a horse healthy, the consistency and feeding routines and food, and it's everything. Routine, consistent routines help get you to the end goal, I feel like. So, I think this is just a great awareness of something everybody knows. All equestrians know they have to be consistent. All athletes know if they want to run that marathon, they have to run consistently, which by the way, I'm running a half marathon, I think in 5 weeks. And I was off for 12 weeks because I had a horrible cough. So, you know, just I'll see what kind of consistency I can squeeze in the next 5 weeks. But it goes back to everything and no matter what you do as an athlete. So, but any last closing remarks you would like to include for people?
I I love what you just said because athletes in general have to be consistent, but people in life need to be as consistent as possible to reach their goals. But I think I would just encourage people to be as honest as they can about setting their goals and how often they can go to the barn and not try to say, well, I'm going to be consistent and set these lofty goals of I'm going to do 4 days a week if that isn't really feasible for your schedule. Really be honest with what you can do and then put it on your calendar and make sure that it is part of your day. Don't try to fit it in without it being scheduled. If you truly want to dedicate and really make that progress, what I want you to do is schedule it for yourself just like you would schedule anything else. You've got to go to work, you've got to go to work, it's on your schedule. You've got to wake up and feed your dog. If you have a dog, you're going to do that. So don't throw away going to the barn
Yeah,
as an option. Put it as a task, and that will help with your consistency as well. But make it where it is where you can fit it into your schedule, but schedule it.
perfect.
That's what my recommendation would be if you want to achieve those goals that you set.
Absolutely. Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Robin. Everybody loves Training Tip Tuesdays. I've had several people ask, when's the next Training Tip Tuesday going live? And I told them it's going live on Tuesday. So,
Well, I'm so excited, and I'm really happy to share whatever topic we come up with and my knowledge that I have just acquired over the years. But I'm open to questions and any kind of concerns people have that they want to hear about. So I hope that they'll start to leave us some comments and give us our next Training Tip Tuesday subject matter.
yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining our Training Tip Tuesday conversation. And you can find this podcast on our website, which is thehorsereview.com. We'll also put it out on all the major podcast listening apps. So be sure to also share it with other friends who are equestrians that you feel like would get a lot out of these and enjoy it. And if we do not have another Training Tip Tuesdays before Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Hopefully we have one.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we'll be able to squeeze one more in. If not, we'll get one out between that holiday week. So, yeah.
Perfect. But if not, Merry Christmas to everyone and enjoy the holiday season no matter how you celebrate.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks.
Thank you for joining the Horse Talk podcast. You can find Horse Talk on any major podcast app, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is The Horse Review. To subscribe to the Mid-South Horse Review to receive our monthly publication, you can visit www.midsouthhorsereview.com/subscribe. Until next time, this is Lauren Abbott, publisher of The Horse Review, and I can't wait for our next episode where we talk horses.